You ever just stop and think about why science even works? I mean, why should our brains be able to decode the secrets of the entire cosmos? Today, we're going to dive into one of the biggest questions out there, the huge philosophical bet that science has to make before it can even get out of bed in the morning.
And, who better to kick this off with than Albert Einstein himself? For him, the fact that we can understand the universe wasn't just obvious. No, he saw it as this deep, profound mystery, something he literally called a miracle.
And he wasn't just being poetic here. He was making a really serious point. Think about it. From a purely logical starting point, we have no right at all to expect an orderly universe. The default expectation should be, well, just chaos. A universe that makes absolutely no sense, something our minds couldn't possibly grasp.
So, if we break this down, what we're really seeing is that for Einstein, science isn't just about looking at stuff and taking notes. It's built on this profound faith, a bet that the world is actually rational. He even went so far as to say that the laws of nature pointed to an intelligence way, way beyond anything human.
He had this amazing analogy for it. He said, imagine a little kid wandering into a huge library. The library's just packed with books, right? But the kid can't read any of them. The languages are totally foreign. But even though he can't read a single word, he can see that the books aren't just thrown around randomly. There's an order to it. And he just knows, deep down, that someone had to have arranged them. For Einstein, that's us, in the cosmos.
Okay, so let's say the universe is orderly. That just opens up a whole other can of worms, doesn't it? The next big question is, why on earth should our brains be able to understand it? I mean, aren't they just these messy lumps of tissue that evolved for, basic survival?
And this is where a philosopher named Alvin Plantinga drops a bombshell with his argument, the EAN. He basically says, look, if you believe that naturalism is true, that there's no God, nothing supernatural, just matter and energy, and that our brains are just a product of evolution for survival, well, then you've got a huge problem. You can't actually trust your own thoughts. Here's the absolute crux of his argument. Evolution could not care less if what you believe is actually true. All it cares about is whether your behavior helps you stick around long enough to pass on your genes. The 4 Fs: fighting, fleeing, feeding, and mating. So as long as your actions work, natural selection is totally blind to the truth of the belief that caused them.
So the logic goes something like this. First, natural selection picks behaviors that work. Second, a working behavior can be based on a totally false belief. So, third, we have no good reason to think our beliefs are true. And then comes the knockout punch, number 4. This includes the belief in naturalism itself. It's like a snake eating its own tail. The idea undermines itself. He has this great little thought experiment to illustrate this, the tiger problem. Okay, so imagine some prehistoric guy. Let's call him Paul. Paul sees a tiger, and he runs for his life. Good move, right? He survives. But evolution doesn't care why he ran. Maybe Paul believes that tigers are giant, fluffy kittens, and the only way to properly pet them is to run away from them really, really fast. The belief is completely bonkers, but the behavior works. He survives.
So you see the problem. If our brains are just survival machines shaped by this blind process, then the very thought naturalism is true is also just a product of that unreliable machine. You're using a tool you've just declared untrustworthy to declare that it's untrustworthy. It's a classic self-defeating argument.
Now, this isn't just a niche argument. The philosopher Thomas Nagel, who is himself an atheist, which makes this so fascinating, basically picks up this thread. He argues that the whole materialist worldview has pretty much hit a brick wall.
For Nagel, the idea that our minds, these things that can grapple with calculus and ponder morality, are just some random accidental byproduct of mindless physical laws, he finds that completely fundamentally unbelievable. He's like, this just doesn't explain reality as we experience it.
So he sort of lays out the options on the table. He says materialism doesn't work, it can't explain consciousness, and it pulls the rug out from under reason. But he also says, I can't bring myself to believe in a creator God. So he's stuck, right? And that's what pushes him to suggest a really out there third option. He calls it natural teleology. And yeah, it's a wild idea. The gist is, what if the universe isn't just a bunch of random stuff happening? What if it has an inbuilt direction or purpose, a sort of cosmic bias towards creating life in mind? It's this mind-bending idea that the universe itself wants to, for lack of a better word, wake up and become self-aware through creatures like you and me.
And this idea, this hint of some deep underlying order, that brings us to maybe the most powerful clue in this whole mystery, and that is the just unreasonable power of mathematics.
I mean, really stop and think about this for a second. Our brains evolved to do stuff like find fruit, throw a spear, and run away from big cats on the African savanna. Why on earth should that same brain be able to come up with something like E=mc² or the Schrödinger equation? There's just no survival advantage to understanding quantum physics.
The physicist Eugene Wigner was so blown away by this that he actually wrote a famous paper about it. He called it the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. He just couldn't get over it. He said it's like this incredible gift that we don't understand and, frankly, don't deserve, especially if the universe is just a random accident.
It's this huge biological mismatch, right? Our brains were forged for survival in a very specific, everyday, macroscopic world. And yet, somehow, that same brain can unlock the secrets of the tiniest subatomic particles and the largest structures in the cosmos. It really suggests that there's some kind of deep connection, some pre-written harmony between our minds and the very fabric of the universe.
Okay, so where does this all lead? Well, it kind of forces us to look at the foundational assumptions. You could even call them the articles of faith of different worldviews.
If you take a strictly naturalistic view, the fact that the universe is orderly is just what they call a brute fact. It just is. There's no deeper reason for it. But that's a bit shaky, isn't it? It gives you no real reason to believe the laws of physics will still be working tomorrow. So for a scientist to even get out of bed and go to the lab, they have to take it on faith that the universe will keep playing by the same rules.
And this really gets to the heart of the tension. You've got theism, which says, okay, there's a rational mind behind the universe, a God, so we expect order, and we expect that our minds were made to understand it. Then you have naturalism, which has to say, well, any order we see is a brute fact, and our ability to understand it is just a complete cosmic fluke. And by the way, we can't even be sure our minds are reliable. It's a pretty stark contrast.
So the big takeaway here is that science isn't self-contained. It can't prove the things it needs to assume to even begin. The whole thing, the entire scientific project, is built on a philosophical assumption, a massive bet that the universe is understandable, and that we, against all odds, are the ones who can understand it.
And so we're left with this massive, lingering question. This incredible, perfect fit between our minds and the universe. Is it just an absurdly lucky accident? Is it a divine gift, a fingerprint of a creator? Or is it something even stranger, like Nagel's idea that the universe itself has a purpose? I don't know the answer, but maybe the most incomprehensible thing of all is that we can even sit here and ask the question in the first place.